Hello and welcome to Frank's School. This looks like a lot. I'm going to go pretty fast here. I'm going to call this laying the subfloor for a faux cut. And this is the 8th in this series. The series is called, I had the name wrong yesterday, it's called Guided Building of a Faux Cut. And this number is just an internal control for me. This is the 7th year, 155th day first video in Frank's School. All right, now I'm going to certainly erase stuff as I go because it'll be easier for me. Now I've snapped lines. That's what the red is, and now I made a template. And the scale is 1 inch equals 6 inches. There's my template for the faux cut itself, which I'll have the measurements on there. And here's the template for, I shouldn't say that, the footprint is what I should have said. And there's the roof line. As you just saw, the faux cut supports a much bigger area roof than itself. All right, so I've said about that. When you've laid the pallets on here, I'll draw them in a second. You want to make sure that these GMA pallets have good stringers, or at least if they have cracked stringers, which they often do, you can get away with that to some extent. But it would be worth your while to scab on a piece of 1x6, which is one of your materials. Scabbing on is when you just nail onto the side of something another piece of wood that's not supported on its own. So it would be worth it to do that. Make it about not quite 48 inches long just for clearance, maybe 47 or something like that. Scab it on there, nail it. If you have to do that little bit of repairing. Now you're going to have to do some blocking to raise this, and I'll show you where you will have to. In the center, we're going to allow for a drain. We're going to cover it, but we're going to leave the frame there for it. And it should be, the inside should be 9 inches by 15 inches, I decided. Now that's maximum, but that would be if you actually want to put a squat plate there, then you would have that gap and you would have it framed. And you need to, the reason you need to have that framed is because right here in the middle, the boards are going to stop. No, well, they will if you saw it out, but they would stop and you'd have to have support right there. The rest of it you don't. Maybe you'll understand that later. Now, I would build that up. You could do it with regular commercial S4S 1x4s, just short ones, 48 inches long. And just build this kind of a thing with back nailing. I'll tell you later about, I do not toe nail unless I absolutely have to. 2 back nails, leaving that kind of a gap there, and then you can just set that on right. It would be sitting right on here and here and there and there. I didn't draw it right, so it would be sitting right on there. Now you're going to have to shim it up so it'll come flush with the rest of the floor. And if you use a 1x4 or a 2x4 is actually 1.5 by 3.5. So you have to have 2 other ½ inches. Use the scrap of the slats. That would give you a ½ inch each. Or you could use a full block, a full 1x block scrap, and just to shim it up so it would be flat. I don't know if you've understood that or not, but that should be done. And you should also use some blocks to support the middle right here, where say a door is going to be here. You don't have to do anything across here, but you should put a few blocks in there to catch the ends that are going to go by. And the same thing here. A little bit of a hassle, and you might wonder, well, why don't you just saw out these pallets? Saw the pallets out. The gap you're left with is 16 inches right in there. And there are reasons. I mean, and you sort of could, but for one thing, stringers don't come that close together. So anyway, I would do that. You might or might not have understood me there. So that not only for the drain in the middle, which we're going to cover, and then also for the ends. Now when we lay the boards on there, we're going to lay them on a 45. And you could establish that by measuring the same distance out in this way and then cross it, and then you've got a 45. And they don't have to be 45. They could be almost any. You don't want them this way. The closer to a 45 you can get, the better. Because there's going to be a floor go over this. This is the subfloor. And for the material, I've used all kinds of stuff. Old barn board scrap, terrible looking stuff, except it all ought to be the same thickness. Just about anything at all. And it can be very forgiving. You can have gaps between it, you can have gaps on the end of it, as long as it's not a spot where your foot's going to go through, because you're going to lay another floor across it going this way. Now as you lay them down, let them run. Don't do a fancy angled 45 cut. I made that mistake, and it's a hassle, and it's not necessary. As a matter of fact, it's a bad idea. Let them run by, and let them be square. Let them be square, and like I'll draw this a little bit oversized, but there, if you had a board that was that long, let it run by. So this sticks out, say 6 inches, and I guess I'd be sort of accurate with that, or maybe even 12. Let them run by the outer pallets by 6 or 12. Now, as you do that, so no 45 cuts. Just let it square. Even if you were not going to let it run by, those 45 cuts are not necessary. We're not going to nail it. We're just going to lay it down. There's no nailing here involved. And what's critical is you need to span the center. You need to span the center and span that gap. So right here, I don't know if you can see, figure this out, but right here you've got an unsupported area, except for where we put the blocking on the ends and the blocking for the drain. Span that for sure. Don't stop your joint there, because you'll make a trap. And if you step on it, the board's going to flip up, it's going to go down. Now this would be longer than 8 foot. If you're doing this with new material, which is fine, it might cost you $30 in boards. If you're going to do that, let's say you're using 8 foot, I would plan it this way. I'm going to draw these bigger. So there's your 8 foot. Now this would be awkward to have a little piece there, but so do one that way, and here goes 8 foot. 8 foot that way. So you're always spanning the center gap, but you're also breaking the joints. That's standard carpentry. And actually, maybe I'll do this before the next video. I'll give you some dimensions about how long these should be pre-cut. So these could actually be pre-cut, and you could just lay them on there. Now, the reason you're going to let them run by, I was shown this by I call my apprentice, is actually when you're all done, outside the faux cut, here's the outside wall. These are the joists, incidentally. That's the span. Outside, you can use them. You can. I think I drew one too. You can use that as a support for a shelf. It's outside, but it would work. So you could have a shelf on each direction. Now, as you work your way down, eventually you're going to come to a point where you're staggering your joints. Boy, this is getting to be a mess. But eventually you'll come down here, so you're using short pieces, and you probably should have them pre-cut before you go to the site. But they can run wild. I mean, they don't have to be as accurate as I'm showing it. You can go along with the chainsaw later if you want to, and just trim them all off, like taking the frosting off a cake. So you need to lay your subfloor down, and I think that's. And remember, you don't nail it. You just lay it down. Then you can walk on this. All right. Oh, and maybe I should have shown you that here are the pallets. There's a pallet. This is a pallet. Boy, what a mess I'm making in my drawing. Here's a pallet. Oops. This is over 6 pallets that are there. Yeah. It's over your 6 pallets, and there's the gap in the middle. Lay it down. All right, that was fast. Don't know if you understood. Bye for now.